Welcome to another episode of Commending and Contending. It's a podcast about how the gospel of Jesus encourages us to live our lives and use our words to commend and contend for Jesus and his gospel. I'm your host, Jonathan Holt. Joining me today is Josh Allan. G'day, Josh.
Hey, Jonathan. Nice to be here.
Where has God planted you, Josh?
In a couple of different places. Firstly, the most important place is where I am spiritually. And so God has blessed me with salvation through the death and resurrection of his son, Jesus Christ. So I think that's my ultimate placement spiritually, and that's my ultimate identity. And everything else kind of circles around that. But a big area that God has given me resources to learn more about and people to encourage me in has been the creative space. So ever since I was probably about 7 years old, I started seeing these things called movies and TV shows and books. And I went, I think I want to do something kind of creative and tell stories. So at the time when I was about seven or eight, I went from wanting to be an actor to eventually wanting to be a film director, because I realized that I think I was a little bit more interested in being behind the camera more so than in front. So I think that's where God placed me as a kid, just a big interest for stories, big interest for movies, borderline obsessive. But I think if you channel it well with friends, it's really constructive. And so a big part of where God's placed me there has also been just the encouragement of my local church community. So I'm really indebted to my pastors, my Christian parents, all these people who not only raised me with a solid Christian biblical framework, but also went, hey, you're actually kind of interested in this. And as a teenager, I started to get kind of good at it. So I had opportunities to film videos for church and just, get people interested in what I was interested in and start to see where my faith and love for filmmaking might not compete, but actually might cooperate really well. So that's kind of where I would say God's placed me, most importantly as a follower of Jesus through what he's done for me, but also I like making movies and I like telling stories. So that's kind of where God's put me, I'd say.
And how has God been encouraging you recently?
I think one of the things that's been really encouraging, and we'll talk a bit more about this, but I've got a feature-length film called Faith and Doubt. And I think the most encouraging thing for me with this project has actually been his people and the community around me actually rallying behind this. So I was able to share a bit about this project with my local church, many of whom had actually already supported this film. And I noticed myself, and I'm a relatively reserved person when it comes to emotions, but I felt myself actually welling up a bit thinking about the people that had already joined me on this journey, taken a chance to get behind this, whether that's through spiritually supporting through prayer or offering to help out practically or offering to support financially. I was really encouraged to know that on such a big project, often you can become isolated if you, particularly first feature film, if you're not connected into community, particularly God's community, it's very easy to get stressed or it's very easy to get pushed certain directions. But going, oh, wow, before I've even shot a frame of this film, there are real human beings, real people, people that follow Christ in a way that is so inspiring to me, actually wanting to see this made. So I think more than this project, which excites me, the people that have helped enable this to get as far as it has already, I think that's been an encouragement to me, knowing that these people have been generous with time, talents, treasure, and just encouragement so that I can make a project about not being alone and actually feel that from God's people. So to me, that's been a massive encouragement in that particular realm of my life. So yeah.
Josh, a large part of the story of how a movie gets made happens before any filming actually kind of gets underway. What's your story of how you came to want to make this film?
Yeah, there's kind of two areas of it. One is the nuts and bolts of how a film, your first film, kind of gets made. And then the second part is sort of the spiritual reason behind it. So the first thing that kind of initially kicked off this idea was I was noticing in my study of films made by people, like the first or second feature films, a lot of them were very small scale. And so the questions I started to ask was, okay, what's the community I have access to, both personally and just where can I film and who can get behind this, and what's the story I actually know how to tell. And so those were the questions as I was researching how these successful small scale first or second feature films by now very successful directors, that's how they kind of approach things. So I went, okay, what's the community I know? Big part of my life has been raised in a solid Christian community. And then what's the story I know? Well, the story I know is kind of what some Christians would call their personal testimony or their angle of what Jesus has done in their life. And so mine's been one of doubting and questioning, but coming back to God with an increased understanding of why he actually makes sense and why he matters to me. And then the other element, rather than just sort of intellectual doubt, has been sort of a spiritual, emotional one going, seeing some of my moral flaws and failings. Am I beyond redemption or can God still redeem that? And going, I think God can actually still redeem that. And so, yeah, those have been all those pieces in the puzzle that have brought me to where I am now and got me to sort of start thinking about writing a script about 5 years ago. So, yeah, that's been kind of my journey, both filmmaking wise and spiritually, to get to this point.
And why do it as a film? Why choose that particular? Because most of us, when we think about movies, the movies we watch, maybe they're mystery movies or action movies or romantic movies or comedies. Um, Movies are all around us in cinemas, on TV, and most of them are not made by Christians with not any particular effort to tell a Christian story. Why do you reckon it's worth trying to make a movie from this Christian point of view?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think because I can see that a massive part of contemporary culture is influenced and flavored by films. So I was going, looking at my life going, well, I love films so much. All my friends are watching movies. Not that books aren't great, not that other forms of media and art aren't great, but one of the primary cultural uh, massive things is film. And so, yeah, there are plenty of secular projects that have artistic merit. Some of them have a spiritual undertone, which is great, but a lot of them don't necessarily seek to honor God specifically and seek to honor Christ. And so, one thing that I've been encouraged by, not just by filmmakers, but by Christians in general, is to have a missional mindset that jumps into the culture rather than jumps out of the culture. So rather than retreating away and going, this world is going to hell in a handbasket, all these secular projects, they've got all these issues. It's like, well, maybe you could critique things that way, but if God's given you the skills, if God's given you a community and you can actually step in, I see that as a really great calling for me, using my skills and interest as a filmmaker and person who loves movies. But I think every Christian can do that in their own workplace, in their own contexts. It just so happens that mine is a film one and happens to be one of the more influential kind of popular culture things out there.
Is a funny thing about movies, actually, that often we think particularly maybe of a key actor who's in the movie or the director of the movie. But I get the feeling when you're watching the credits, there's like so many people involved in making this thing happen. What's that like? How do you kind of get all those people on the same page to tell one clear story?
Yeah, that's I'm really grateful that you acknowledge the amount of different people that go behind this. Where transparently, our film is going to be a lot smaller than that. So the credits might be 3 roles for me and 3 roles for my producer Wayne, who's been doing massive stuff behind the scenes. So maybe not quite as many horse wranglers and 128 extras. Actually, we will probably have that many extras, to be honest. But yeah, a lot smaller scale. So in that sense, yeah, not going to have that many people. But the way to, I don't know, the way that I've experienced stuff making short films to get people behind, I guess, a vision or whatever you want to call it, is I think just to be like, for lack of a better word, just authentic to what you like, what you value. And I think that genuine sense of excitement, regardless of what kind of personality you have, I found that I don't have to be the super gregarious guy with the megaphone. I might just have a one-on-one conversation with a director of photography who shoots a film, or do some rehearsals with an actor or whatever. But actually, regardless of your personality and how much that seems like a very film directory thing, excitement and a clarity of, hey, I think I kind of want to do this. What do you think? And involving people in, I think I've seen that's been really effective, both in collaborators creatively, but also now seeing people want to help fund the film is going, all right, I've got an idea. I think it's meaningful. Here's just an open invitation. And then people can take ownership themselves and bring their ideas or bring their funds or bring just anything that they feel called to do. So yeah, I think leading with your own passion, excitement, and that sort of thing has just been really beneficial in my life, at least.
I think the nearest comparison I can think of is the symphony orchestra, that in a way it takes kind of all, however many there are, 80, 120 people, all on their own instruments, all doing their own thing, with the conductor madly waving her arms around. Yeah, but they've all got to cooperate together and share that sense of it. And it creates something kind of marvelous in the collaborative effort of it.
Yes, definitely. And I think film, more than other smaller scale things like being a novelist or even like a songwriter, there's so many different people. So you can take a level of ownership over the script that you've written or the vision or ideas you have as a director, but it's really community based. And so in my case with the first feature film, it's both community based in the people behind the camera filming stuff and the actors, but also it's community based in the churchgoers and family members and friends and people that actually, yeah, get behind this project too. So lots of community behind making a film. It takes a village to raise a child, and I guess a village to shoot a movie. So that's
Yeah,
been
that
my
sounds
journey.
about right.
Yeah.
Uh, Sometimes I wonder whether Christian filmmakers are so busy being Christian they don't make a good movie. Do you think that's a danger, or am I just being harsh about Christian filmmakers?
No, I think you are very much in the right direction, and I won't point to any examples where I think the message has overcome the art itself, where it sort of stops being a story and starts feeling like propaganda. And not that I think there is still utility in making a film that functions more like a sermon might, where there's really obvious applications and a very clear gospel message. I don't want to say that there haven't been films that have really touched people. I know Christians that have been really moved by those kinds of projects, but I think particularly I'm interested in the missional space as a kid that went to public school, and I went to a uni where most people weren't Christians. So I feel really burdened with, there are so many people that don't know Jesus. How do I and the people I know create something that actually invites them in? And so I think for that kind of audience, and also Christians who want just an authentic story, I think story is the answer as a filmmaker, not kind of sermon stuff. So that's been a big thing, a mindset that I've had for quite a while now. I think story is the thing that moves people, particularly in the film world. And if there happens to be a message or some themes that are meaningful, great. But if you don't get people behind your characters, if they don't relate to it, if they don't connect with it, if they're not engaged, then they're not going to stick around for an invitation to consider what the actual deeper layers of the story is about.
Yeah, I reckon you're right. And I think actually a lot of film, even secular film, because they're great at storytelling, like they've refined how they do the storytelling stuff. The messages, they are communicating messages in a way movies do disciple you in worldviews, in values, in particular beliefs. And you can kind of trace those out sometimes, the messages that movies have. They are actually teaching us things. And I think you're right. The sermon in church on Sunday from the preacher, that's the right place for that art form. But driven by stories, and we're driven by stories. It's remarkable how much of what God's given us in his word is stories to engage with, that often don't hammer home a moral, but to engage you with a story that take you on a journey of what God is doing in his rescuing work. Josh, if people want to find out more about kind of this project you're working on and what they could do to be involved in it, where would they go to look and find that?
Yeah, so the easiest central platform that we currently have is a website. So you can go to faithdoubtfilm.com.au. So that's faithdoubtfilm.com.au. And there'll be a bunch of different relevant clickable links and icons. It'll give you access to, I believe, our Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube if you want to see more resources about what this project actually is. And once you actually feel won over and called to maybe back this film, there's 3 different ways you can do that, and that will be part of that website that you can click on. So the first is prayer, the second is practical support, and the third is partnering financially. So yeah, if people want to back us, faithdoubtfilm.com.au is probably the quickest and easiest way to do that. But also, yeah, you can jump onto Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube if you want to do a bit more research before committing to actually backing it. But I would say, yeah, website, probably the quickest and easiest way to do that.
I reckon we'll throw that link into the show notes so that people can find it easily and click on it and go and have a look if they want to follow it up. Now, is it a really dumb question to ask you for your favorite film, Josh?
It's not a dumb question. It's just one that I'm very dumb at answering because I've seen too many. Favorite film? I'll give you a film that really inspired me as a kid, and I will give you maybe a couple of examples of films that helped mature my taste as a young adult teenager. So that one of the key films that I loved as a kid, key projects, I guess you'd call it was a series, was Star Wars. Pretty obvious, inspired so many filmmakers, but that was one where I went, whoa, man, this is, people actually made this, and how the heck did they make this? And I think the story was actually what got me, not the visual effects. The mythic yet human story got me, and that's actually the thread that then ties into my teenage years. My dad went, okay, Josh, I think you're old enough to transition from just watching fantastical, mythical sci-fi stuff into some more human drama stuff. So a few examples of things that kind of shifted the way I saw movies from just being big epic spectacles with the human element to stuff that zoomed really close in on the nuts and bolts of just human experience. A few of those projects, Good Will Hunting, I think that's a classic. Lots of really great themes there. A little bit edgy, not for everyone, but very human and very real. Another example, similarly kind of got a little bit of a hard edge to it, but Manchester by the Sea. It's heavy, but kind of human and hopeful and complex. The characters have traumas and baggage, but there's also that sense of connection being a healing thing in life. So I can rattle on heaps of stuff, but they were a few key examples of as a kid and then young adult. So this project, Faith and Doubt, is a lot more like a Christian's version of those projects. A lot less swearing, a little bit more clean cut, but still those rough edges of life that people can go, oh, wow, I relate to that character. That person's mum seems like my mum. I feel like I'm that person going through that experience. So yeah, there are a few examples and how it's kind of relevant to me.
Oh, thanks for chatting with us today, Josh. It's been terrific.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers.